In the last unit, you learned about strings and how to store strings in variables. Strings are one kind of data type that you can use and store in variables. Numbers are another kind of data type that you can use and store in variables. You're going to learn about two kinds of number data types. The first one is integers, or int. Integers are the numbers that don't have decimal points. You may remember some of the examples from the previous unit about variables, such as x is equal to 5 or y is equal to 10. In both these cases, I'm storing integers, which are 5 and 10, in variables. They are integers because they don't have decimal points. Numbers with decimal points are called floats. Some examples of the float data type are num1 is equal to 4.558, num2 is equal to negative 9.9, and num3 is equal to 0.879. In these cases, num1, 2, and 3 are the variables, and the decimal values on the right are the data type. You know that if I print out one of these variables, it will return the number stored in the variable. For example, writing print num1 will return the value 4.558. Hey guys, welcome to your first video about operators. In Python, you can perform all types of operations. In this video, you're going to learn about arithmetic operators. Arithmetic operators are operators you use on numbers to perform simple operations, such as multiplication and addition. The basic arithmetic operators are the plus sign for addition, the minus sign for subtraction, an asterisk for multiplication, a forward slash for division, and a percentage sign for the modulus operator. The modulus operator returns the remainder of a division. For example, 7 mod 2 would be 1, because when you divide 7 by 2, the remainder is 1. You can carry out arithmetic operators on all numbers, including those stored in variables. Here are some examples. If I write print 6 times 4 and run the code, it returns the product of 6 and 4, which is 24. This works the same way for all other operators. Another example is, let's say I create 3 variables with numbers stored in them. num1 is equal to 4, num2 is equal to 88, and num3 is equal to 9. If I want to get the sum of these 3 numbers, I can write print num1 plus num2 plus num3. And when I run the code, it returns 101, which is the sum of all the numbers stored in those respective variables. Go ahead and use arithmetic operators on numbers yourself and play around with them to get a better understanding of the concept. Hey guys, you're going to learn about comparison operators and booleans in this video. So comparison operators are literally operators that compare 2 numbers. These are the comparison operators with their respective symbols. There is less than, greater than, less than or equal to, more than or equal to, and lastly, not equal to. We will get back to these operators in a few seconds. Now, what are booleans? A boolean is basically either a true or a false. The way it works is you write a statement, and the output is whether that statement is true or false. This is where comparison operators come in. When I write a statement comparing 2 numbers, such as 4 is greater than 5, the output will be whether that comparison is true or false. In this case, the output would be false because 4 is not greater than 5. Let's look at some examples of this. If I were to write print 9 is equal to 8, the output would be whether or not 9 is equal to 8. Guess what the output would be? It would obviously be false. However, if I were to write print 9 is not equal to 8, the output would be true because 9 is not equal to 8. I can do the same with numbers stored in variables. I will create a variable x is equal to 10 and another variable y is equal to 96. If I were to write print x is less than or equal to y, then the output would be true because 10 is less than 96. That is what comparison operators do. Logical operators are the last kind of operator you need to learn about. You learned how when you use comparison operators on two numbers, the output returns whether that statement is true or false. Well, logical operators return values in reference to whether two or more statements are true or false. There are three logical operators: and, or, and not. I will show you examples using all of them. The first logical operator, and, returns true if both the statements are true, and it returns false if even one statement is false. Or returns true if one or more of the statements is true. It only returns false if all of the statements are false. And lastly, for the operator not, if the statement is false, then it returns true. And if the statement is true, then it returns false. Now for the examples. Let's say I have three variables. A is equal to 9, B is equal to 3, and C is equal to 2. If I were to write print A is more than B and A is more than C, then here is what the computer would do. It would check if the first statement, A is greater than B, is true, which it is because 9 is more than 3. Then it would check if the second statement, A is more than C, is true, which it also is. So, if both the statements are true, can you guess what the output would be? It would be true. However, if I change one of the statements to false, the output would be false. So, if I change the second statement, A is less than C, then it would evaluate to false. What if I wanted to use the same statements, but I wanted the output to be true even if one of them was false? I want the output to be true as long as one statement is true. Then, I would use the OR operator instead of the AND operator. Now, when I run the code, guess what the output would be? The output would be true, because one of these statements is true. Lastly, if I were to write print not 9 is not equal to 0, can you guess what the output would be? This is tricky because there are two nots, the logical not operator and the not equal to comparison operator. The output would be false because 9 is not equal to 0 is a true statement, and the not operator prints the opposite of that. It's important to note that you cannot use and, or not as names for variables because that might cause errors. I encourage you to play around with these operators on Visual Studio to gain a better understanding of them. Until now, you've only learned how to code while giving the input yourself. For example, you only know how to assign values to variables yourself. We haven't asked the user for anything. In this video, you learn how to take input from a user. The function that is used to do this is called the input function. It is another built-in function that Python has. It's very useful as it is the only function that lets you take input from the user. This makes it interactive. We're going to be using it a lot from here on out. The syntax for the input function is just input, open brackets, open quotation marks, and in the quotation marks, write the string you want to display. It's important to remember that you will always need to store the input that you take from the user in a variable. Here's an example of how to use the input function. Let's say I wanted to ask the user for their name and store it in a variable called name. So I would create a variable called name and I would say name is equal to input, open brackets, open quotation marks, enter your name. Now when I run this code, the string enter your name is printed to the console. Now, the user can actually type in their name. I'm going to type in my name, Talika, and click on enter. Now, the input that I got asked for, which is the string Talika, my name, will be stored in the variable name. Always remember to store the input in a variable, otherwise you won't be able to retrieve it. Now, to use the input, I could display the message, hi name. The name will be whatever name the user enters. I could write print hi plus name plus exclamation mark. If I try to run the code now, it asks me for my name. I enter my name, and then it displays the message, hi Talika, because Talika is what I entered as my name. Now I want you to write the same code and try this out by entering your name. Being able to take in user input and make the program interactive is one of the coolest parts of coding. Hi guys. So you learned how to take input from a user. But the thing is that when you take input, it is always in the form of a string. So what if you wanted to take input in the form of numbers? You would have to convert the string input to numbers. Remember the two types of numbers we learned, integers and floats? If you wanted to take input as a number, then you would need to convert the string to an integer or a float. It is very simple to convert a string to an integer or a float. You just have to write int, open brackets, open quotation marks, and enter the string you want converted to an integer. Or you can write float, open brackets, open quotation marks, and enter the string you want converted to a float. Let's say I have the string 555 stored in the variable a. If I wanted to convert this to an integer, I would write a is equal to int, open brackets, open quotation marks, and I would write 555. Now, the value stored in variable a would be the integer 555. Let's say I have the variable b with the string 99.86 stored in it. Since this is a decimal, if I wanted it to remain a decimal, I would have to convert it to a float number. Can you guess how I would convert this to a float number? Again, I would just put float and put brackets around the string like this. We are going to be casting strings to numbers a lot in one of the projects at the end of this course. So, if I wanted to take input from a user and convert that input to an integer or float, here is what I would do. I would create the variable that I wanted to store that number in, which can be called num. Then I would write int, open brackets, input, open brackets, and in quotation marks, I would write enter an integer because that's the text I want displayed. Now, if I run the code and enter the input as the number 7, this will be cast to an integer type and be stored as an integer. Hey guys, so in this video, you're going to learn about a very important and useful coding concept, the if-else statement. So what is the if-else statement? It's a statement that lets us run a certain function or command only if a certain statement is true. Do you remember comparison operators and booleans from the previous videos? We're going to use those here. Here's an example of the if statement. Let's say I have two variables. A is equal to 16 and B is equal to 13. My goal for the program now is that if A is greater than B, then Python will print the message A is greater. So I would write if A is greater than B, colon, print A is greater. This code basically says that if a statement is true, then print out the statement. In this case, the statement A is greater than B is true. So, when I run this code, the statement A is greater is printed out. As you can see, we've used a boolean and a comparison operator in the statement A is greater than B. Now let's say if A and B are equal, I want to print the message they are equal. And if they aren't equal, then I want to print this message not equal. So I would write if A is equal to B, print they are equal. Else, print not equal. This is a good example of the if-else statement. In this case, the statement A is equal to B is not true. So guess what the output would be? It would be not equal. In this example, we actually said, if a certain statement is true, print they are equal, and if it's false, print not equal. This is actually a boolean because it only runs on the command if the statement is true. If the statement is false, it runs a different command. And booleans are basically true or false. The if-else statement really depends on the boolean. The example also shows the use of a comparison operator equal to. We can use all the different comparison operators for the if-else statement. For example, we could also say that if A is greater than B, print A is greater or equal to B. Else, print A is less than B. In this case, greater than or equal to is the comparison operator. This would work the same way for all other comparison operators. Don't comparison operators and booleans make a lot more sense now? Hey guys, so in this video, you're going to learn the actual syntax for the if-else statement. By now, you may have gotten a gist of the if-else statement format. The syntax or format looks something like this. If, test expression, body of if, else, the body of else. In the body of if, you would put a print function or something you want the computer to carry out only if the statement is true. And in the body of else, You'd put what you want the computer to carry out if the statement is false. There are some technicalities to be careful of in the syntax. First, always remember to put a colon after the if condition and after the else. You will get an error if you don't. Second, it's super important to remember to have proper indentation in the if-else statement. If you don't indent properly, you will again get an error. An indent is a big space or tab before the statement to be carried out. Usually, your computer should take care of the indentation for you if you put a colon. But always make sure that there is an indentation